it's just really different.
Yeah. I think we're about ready to start here.
Okay.
All right. This is Bryan Daniels. I'm President and CEO of the Blount Partnership. I want to welcome everybody to our community conversation series that we've been having. Today, I'm joined by the Director of Schools, Mr. Britt. He has been a longtime member of our community, and he's actually traveling as we speak, and really appreciate him taking the time out of his schedule to join us today. So, Dr. Britt, welcome.
I'm glad to be with you, Brian. Thank you.
So as we've been doing with our community conversation, this was really centered around COVID, but there's been so many changes in the world that I think we'll discuss during our time. But let's first talk about the impact of COVID and the school system. As we saw COVID, I've asked this question to other leaders before. As we saw COVID come from China over to the Seattle area, and then it made its way across the U.S. Talk to us a little bit about the school system and how you all responded to this crisis.
Sure. Yeah, as we saw this ramping up across the nation, we were getting closer, of course, to our spring break, and we formed a COVID-19 response team made up of supervisors and principals and staff members. So they were very instrumental in our plans. And one of the big things was to initiate this thing was to look and see, okay, what field trips do we have out there? And you may remember this was written in the paper, but we had a big meeting, and it was a really tough decision, but we had to cancel some field trips to New York, to LA, to other areas. And I'm sure glad we did now. Looking at it in hindsight, it looks like it was a good decision, but at the time it was really hard because, it was, those kids had worked really hard, and it was they had raised money, and it was just a lot of things that went into that, and you hate to take that opportunity away from them. But and there was a lot of unknowns at the time, a lot of uncertainty, as there is still today. But as that ramped up, we saw a need to have a team of individuals, both at the school level and the system level, to work together to try to make some decisions around how we were going to respond to this as a community.
Okay. Who was involved in those conversations? It sounds like you've put a team together to kind of respond to the crisis. Who is on that team that kind of helps make those decisions?
Sure. Well, our assistant directors, both assistant directors. We have Amanda Vance that's on that team. She's taken over our communications part of this as well. She will serve as our elementary supervisor, pre-K through 5th grade this year. Jennifer Moore, who's our supervisor of secondary education, she also is on that team. In addition to that, we've got several other supervisors, and then we have a number of principals that also serve on that team as well. I can't name all of them. I'll leave somebody out, but listen, all of them did a super job, and we'll put out some things and say, here's what we think we need to do, and then those principals will be able to tell us whether that's practical and possible at the actual school level. And so that's very helpful to work together with those teams.
So as you all have had to make decisions in what's best for the students and modify the school schedule, one of those big projects, or if you would, not projects, but events that occurs in the community everybody looks forward to is graduation. And so how has graduation been impacted by this situation?
Well, Brian, it's a great question. it goes beyond graduation. Let me just first of all say that, our seniors, our hearts go out to them because, they had the last 9 weeks is typically when they get to have their picnics and their senior events, the signing of their yearbooks, all of those big events that they look forward to, not to mention prom, that we had to cancel all of those things. But we were determined to make sure our kids have a graduation that would be memorable. And so we postponed those, and Heritage will have its graduation on July the 24th, and William Blount will have it on July the 31st. And we have the Samuel Everett School of Innovation that also will have a graduation this year. It's their first time. We also did some military graduations. We've already had those, Brian, where we had 30-minute slots. And so kids would come in with their families individually, and we would do a little ceremony, and they would get their diploma. We did that because those graduates are getting ready to be deployed to go to basic training and so on. So, but that's that's how we've tried to do our graduation, is to put it out where we felt like that would give us plenty of time to make plans, to see how things are going in Blount County in terms of COVID-19, and hopefully have more of a traditional or a blended traditional social distance. We'll continue to do social distancing at this at graduation, but hopefully it'll be pretty representative of a traditional graduation as our students. Hopefully it'll be a memorable experience for them.
Well, appreciate you making the efforts of trying to salvage what you can of their senior year and allow them to celebrate this milestone. Have all the classes concluded now, or are any still going on at all?
Yeah, that's a great question. We do have some summer school going online right now, and it's fairly small, but we do have that going on. But May 8th is when was our last day of online learning. And then we had about 2 weeks to sort of get some kids caught up, get some kids, maybe some credit recovery done in there, finished up. And then in addition to that, we had to collect all the Chromebooks and materials and things like that, do our grading and things like that. And we'll be releasing grade cards here rather soon. So yeah, we're finished up for the most part on the school year.
Yeah, you had mentioned on some summer programs that are going on. Does that impact athletics? Are athletes able to come in and train during the summer at all?
Yeah, we have a protocol for that. So we have a screening that goes on last Tuesday, I guess. May the 26th is when we began to do that. So our athletes could come back to campus and they could be training with their coaches under the supervision of their coaches. We do screen every athlete, everybody that comes through the front door. We have a temperature check and some screening questions. And then in addition to that, we also are maintaining social distance in that there's no contact sports that are actually going on. Those like football and basketball, they can come in, but they can only train. They can work out and train, but they can't have any contact at this point in time.
What kind of guidance are you getting from the state and the governor's office as it relates to programming?
I think it's Executive Order 38 by the governor. He has a section in there that's specific to high school athletes, and athletics in general. And so that's pretty good information. And then TSSA's put out some things. Of course, they leave it up pretty much to each individual county, but we've tried to follow the governor's executive order and things of that nature, and just try to make it as safe as possible in terms of mitigating infection. We have a real rigid cleaning and disinfecting protocol as well, much more so than in the past. So hopefully that will help as well.
That's great. I'll mention to our folks that have signed on during our interview, you're welcome to message any questions you'd like asked, and we'll try to respond to those and get those before Dr. Britt. With that, I know you don't have a crystal ball, but talk to us a little bit about the planning that the system is looking at for the fall and really the next school year, of how you'll try to keep students safe and those that are concerned about the fall.
Yeah, well, that's a great question. We're trying to center our planning around three main priorities. Certainly the health and safety of our students and staff is absolutely number one this year. And number two, of course, is academics, whether that be preparing ourselves for in-person. We are preparing for in-person learning opportunities for our students in our schools, but we also are planning what it might look like in a hybrid model where we have some in-person and some distance learning. And then we also have some planning around what does it look like going forward with complete remote distance learning as well, because there may be times throughout the year that we have to seamlessly move into both a hybrid and a complete remote learning for our students. So we'll have all those scenarios planned out and exactly what they look like. The good news is we've had a considerable practice at that. This past 9 weeks, we were completely remote and distance learning. And I want to tell you, Brian, it was a joy to watch our teachers in action and how they adapted. That's not something that they necessarily are trained to do. They're trained to do in-person learning, but they did a marvelous job, in my opinion, and I'm just so proud of them. And our students and parents. This was a real adjustment for our students and parents. I've heard from more parents that say, well, they've gained a greater appreciation for schools and teachers during this time. So that may be a pleasant unintended consequence of this. But we really look forward to getting our kids back in school this fall. That's what we're planning for, and we've missed them a lot. And but it's going to look different. There's no question about it. We have our COVID-19 team will be working. We have two major teams. We have a team around operations that includes what buses will look like, what food service will look like, and so on, logistics. And then we have our academic team, and that's how do we catch kids up? We're going to have some learning gaps there. As hard as we try to make it as equitable as possible, students have different challenges with online learning. So therefore, we're going to have some learning gaps that we need to fill and quickly as possible. And then, what does academics look like in terms of in-person, hybrid model and distance learning in the future? Because it won't look like this past 9 weeks. We'll have to have some very much more rigid type of requirements and so forth. So we're making plans for all of those scenarios. So those teams are working right now to get those plans together, and all that will bubble up through our COVID-19 response team. And we'll have a plan in July that we'll put out to parents and let them know what exactly we're doing. But I think parents should expect that we'll be doing social distancing in our schools to the best of our ability, and certainly planning around what does it look like to screen kids, what does it look like to social distance in our schools, what is academics going to look like, and what is food service going to look like, because that won't look anything like what we've done in the past. So but all of these things will be for the health and safety. That's our number one priority. We want to make sure that we have a health and safety protocol in place, and we're using some of our CARES Act money to purchase some additional machinery to clean our buildings, make sure that we have fogger machines, those Clorox fogger machines that disinfect our buildings thoroughly, so that we have some really clean environments each and every day for our kids to come back into. So looking forward to getting those plans together and getting that out to our parents.
So it really sounds like you've got the resources to really adapt rather quickly to the changing learning environment, and being able to deploy out technology for students to have access to their curriculum and their fellow classmates. Have you ever run into any broadband issues? Is that prevalent in our community, or have we seen improvement?
We've seen a real improvement from about 5 years ago. In our latest survey, we've got somewhere very close to 90% of our students and families that say they have broadband or internet access at home. And we had pretty good engagement when we first started this distance remote learning. Of course, as time went on, and we experienced this across the state, as time went on and as the governor, of course, closed schools through the rest of the year, that engagement tended to drop off a little bit. But at the same token, in terms of actual access to online learning, it's around 90% of our students, and we're going to work to reduce that. Some of our CARES Act money will be for technology, especially in our lower grades, K1, 2, and also for hotspots to try to expand that broadband. But there's some places that, quite frankly, we just can't get a signal to. So those students will still have to be paper packet driven if we have to go to a remote driven distance learning scheme.
Okay. So with us talking about the options for the learning, you have to look at, will COVID impact you in the fall? And if so, and if schools are closed, maybe possibly a prolonged year, or maybe it's just you adapt, and one day we're in the classroom, next day we're at home learning. But what are your thoughts on when the school year would start?
Yeah, for us, right now we're planning on our regular normal day that we've planned for, which is July the 29th. It's one of the earliest openings that we've had, but it's not the earliest in the state, but it is certainly early for us. Typically we open the 1st of August anyway, so July 29 is the day that we're planning. Now that may get interrupted by what's going on in the world and Blount County specifically to COVID-19. So we'll see how that goes. But that's what we're planning on right now. And of course, then as you go through the year, we'll be monitoring and seeing how things go. And of course, we may have to have a closure. It may be we have to close one school because of some issues with the infection in that school, as opposed to closing the entire school system down. And then again, it may become important for us to have a full closure, and we'll be prepared for all of those scenarios, Brian.
Okay. So as you look at the upcoming year, or do you have the staffing you need to accommodate the upcoming year? Are there any, and this is a question that has been typed in here, are there any new positions being added, or any backfilling that you need to do for the upcoming year?
Well, that's a great question. Unfortunately, we are in budget distress because of a declining sales tax revenue, and so that has really made it difficult to budget for this coming school year, because there's still a lot of unknowns about where that will go. And as you know, a great deal of sales tax revenue comes to the school system. And so with planning for a major decline in that, we've had to actually cut positions. So there's no new positions in our budget currently. And it does concern me. I just want to tell you that I'm not sure that we'll be able to subdivide students into smaller groups as much as what we would like, because we don't have the staffing to do that. So we're going to have to be creative about how we plan and how we go about having some, social distancing safety in our schools as a result of that. But we don't have the staff to do some of the things that the CDC has requested. We don't have the ability to social distance on school buses as much as what the CDC has recommended at this point in time. So we're going to have to be creative there as well.
Are there any capital projects that the system is trying to undertake that would maybe make it even a little bit more of a challenge for the system?
Well, currently we have a number of projects going on, especially at our two high schools. We are excited about this, is that at Heritage High School, our science labs, that's an entire wing, science wing at Heritage High School, has been in a stage of renovation and will be ready to go on July the 29th. So we're excited about seeing our students in brand new science labs out there. It's going to be a very exciting time for us. And at William Blount, long overdue, but we are doing a complete overhaul of the HVAC systems there at William Blount. And so I think our students and staff will experience a much more comfortable environment there as they come back into the building. And so that'll have a stage of completion, or the first phase of it will be completed for the fall, and then we'll have some more work to do on that. And then next year we're going to do science labs at William Blount and try to do some HVAC work at Heritage High School. So that does complicate some things and make things a little more challenging when you're trying to work around those kind of things. You've heard some things most recently about the linear sewer, and certainly can address that, but we're looking at how we can best get that sewer fixed there for the students and staff at Lanier. It is functioning, the Lanier sewer does, but it is on its last leg, so we have to get prepared to do a full replacement there at some point in time.
So talking about Lanier, of course, we've seen in our local news about discussions of should Lanier be closed. Some of the rhetoric, if you will, is talking about a declining student population and a variety of things. You care to respond or comment to Lanier and its future for this year?
Sure. The Board of Education is the body that would be making that decision, and they don't collectively, the board does not have any plans to close Lanier at this time. So we are planning to open Lanier for this coming school year, the 2020-2021 school year, and we also are tasked with how do we best address the sewer system issue there, and we're looking for how do we get that done during this school year. So that's where we are with Lanier. Okay,
thank you very much. We've got another question, kind of a follow-up that was typed in. Going back to COVID, how will you determine what will you use as a determining factor for any potential closure, whether it be a single school or the entire system?
That's a great question. And we will certainly be following a couple of metrics. One would be we'll look at the protocols that come from the CDC, but most definitely, and I am in contact with Robert Schmidt, who's our head of the Blount County Health Department. And so we'll be, of course, in contact with him, and certainly Lance Coleman, our emergency management person for the county. And so in consultation with those folks, we'll have a protocol set up to determine that. But if we have an infection there, of course, in a school, let's say, we would definitely close that school for very vigorous and deep cleaning. That might be up from 1 day to 5 days. It just depends on the level of infection. And then we would have a group that would have to quarantine, and we would be serving those students at home in a remote distance learning for that period of time. And in terms of how would we know to close the entire school system, that definitely would come from our Blount County Health Department, consultation with them, and seeing the level of infection across Blount County, and then we would determine whether that would be appropriate to do for us, or if it comes from the state, just like the governor did before. If this is a state matter, then of course we would follow suit, and just like we did this past year, we would close at that time. So we're looking at those different areas. That's not a decision that we'll make in isolation. It's a decision that we'll make as a result of what's going on in our county health system.
Okay. Did you this past spring have any COVID cases, whether of a student, faculty, staff level? Were you all directly impacted in any way?
Not to my knowledge, no. In fact, we had, I think, one staff person, to my knowledge, was tested for COVID, but was negative. Okay. And so, but outside of that, we were not notified of any of our staff, students, anyone of that nature that actually had COVID.
Are there any modifications to how buses will run, or how they'll be handled in social distancing and picking up students?
Well, that's a great question. We are in the process of looking at that and planning for that. We contract our bus services just like Maryville and Alcoa and other school systems in our region as well do that. And if we followed to the letter what is being recommended, where we have one child per seat and an empty seat between every child, we'd be running buses all day long. I mean, there's just no way that we could, we're a system of 10,500 students. We have, 7,500 students that, 8,000 students that might ride the bus in a day. There's just no way to accomplish that. We don't have enough buses. We couldn't even stagger enough bus service to do that. So we're looking at what can we do to modify our bus riding situation and how we're going to approach that. And so we're looking at several hybrid models, and we'll come out eventually with how we're going to approach that.
So when you look at those challenges, is the system for your planning for the fall, are you planning on testing every staff member each day coming into the school, or the students also coming into school? Just the logistics of that seem mind-boggling in itself. Yeah,
that's all under planning meetings right now. Certainly screening. When you may or may not know this, but our Friends program, our child aftercare, is open, and we are operating that. And every staff member, every child is screened before they're admitted to the program each day. Now, that's a little bit different in that, it's, self-contained group, and it's a much smaller group. But when you get into serving 10,500 students now, that's a challenge to screen all those students, and of course 1,700 staff members coming to work every day. That's going to be a major challenge for us. So we're looking at ways that to be able to do that, but but we'll be having some type of screening process in place. That we're committed to doing that. We just don't know what that looks like just quite yet.
Understand. So let me ask you, kind of shifting gears away from COVID, and this is all recent. We go to sleep on a Friday and the world continues to change in 24 hours. But with the events that we're seeing play out in Minneapolis and across the U.S., how are students able to express themselves within the school system of their concerns that they have for what's playing out right now, and what resources are there for the students from the school perspective to help them cope and make them feel like they have a voice?
Yeah, absolutely. That's another great question. And certainly we want to encourage our students to have a voice in this. This affects them and their families and all of Blount County. It affects all of us as Americans. And we certainly want our kids to have a voice. So we definitely have a process there that if groups of students or individual students want to contact their school counselors, that's certainly encouraged. We also encourage groups of students to approach their principal about any type of appropriate gatherings that they may choose to participate in at the school. We've had some of that in the past as well, where we've had students that would want to show their protest toward one thing or another, whatever that matter may be. And this is certainly an extreme and certainly an important one, absolutely. And we want our students to have a voice. So we would expect as we come back into school that certainly our students will want to have a say in that. And just an awful situation, that happened in Minneapolis, and unacceptable behavior and there, and tragic. And we certainly, our hearts go out to that family that was affected, and of course all the families now that are affected through some of the violence that has preceded it. So we want to make sure that we reach out to our kids and our staff as well, and make sure that we're doing all we can to listen and to do what we can to respond appropriately.
Have there been any issues or concerns with safety of children from the outside as we see things play out? That's been a concern with some of the questions we've gotten here with, are there resource officers prevalent and available, and how are they felt within the system? Are students comfortable with them and that sort of thing?
Yeah, Brian, we have SROs assigned to every school. They are embedded into the school community. They fill so many roles as well. They're not just police officers dispatched like they're in a precinct in our schools. They really are part of the school community. And I'm really proud of the fact that we've had a great relationship with our sheriff's department, and really proud that our SROs are very responsive to the needs of our students. And they are trained to be SROs, so they're trained to deal with young people, and whether that be elementary age, middle school, or high school. And we also have 2 to 3 SROs at each one of our high schools. So we have one at the gate, of course, and then we have 2 inside the buildings, and they coordinate and operate with the administration and staff and students there on a daily basis. And so they really do overall an outstanding job, I think, helping keep a peaceful environment, one that is focused on academics and safety and security for all of our students, which is our #1 priority.
So another question that has come in kind of related to this topic. Will school visitors be permitted into the system, and parents, are they allowed to still have lunch with some of their students or not?
That's a really great question too. I would envision as we enter school in the fall that there will be very limited visitors to the school. In fact, I would say that that parents will only be coming into the school by appointment only, and for the business of whether it be some type of IEP team meeting or some type of meeting around their child and their child's progress, whatever that may be. There will be no access to student groups from outsiders as we enter school. So there'll be no visitors in the classroom. There'll be no outside organizations that will be allowed to come in and read to our students. As that's a great activity, believe me. But during this period of time, we can't take the chance to expose our student, staff, or to the visitor. We can't take that chance. So visitors are going to be on a very limited basis, and that'll have to be coordinated through appointments with the principal.
Well, Dr. Britt, we're approaching the end of our session with you. We appreciate you taking time out of the day today to join us, and appreciate those that have logged on. If you didn't quite catch the entire interview, you'll be able to see it on our social media from the Blount Partnership of today's proceeding. Dr. Britt, thank you very much for your time today. And if there's anything that we as a community can do to support the system, please feel free to reach out.
Brian, thank you. I want to thank you for taking the opportunity to do this with our school systems in Blount County, and for allowing us to let people know what we're doing in terms of planning. And you know, our motto in the Blount County schools is to care, love, and serve our students and this school community, and that's what we plan to do. And I think that now more than ever, our world needs more love for all people, and hopefully through loving our staff and our students and our school community, we can bring people together as opposed to dividing people. I hope that we're not going to be in a divisive world. I hope someday we envision a world where we can all live together and in harmony. And that's certainly the vision of our school system and what we're trying to advocate for as we go forward. So again, thank you, and I hope that you have a great day today.
Thank you, sir. Hopefully you have a great day and a great upcoming year. Take care. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.